In today's world of college football, social media support can make a huge difference for players as they build their brands and connect with fans. That's why we're proud to highlight TJ Bollers, a rising star at Cal and the son of former teammate Trevor Bollers. TJ is making waves with his incredible talent, hard work, and love of the game. Show your support by following TJ on the following social media. On Instagram at _TJ_B_. Twitter at TJ35Balling. That's TJ, the number 35, BALLIN. Let's rally behind TJ and show him the support and the power of community in college football. Thanks, and let's start the show.
Somebody sent me in motion, ran to the right, subsequently turned towards the line and started running to the line, and all hell broke loose. Everybody just went buck wild. Coach Fry's yelling at the top of the lungs, "Somebody tell Bollers that he's not in Canada anymore." God damn it.
Welcome to the Gallery and Hurley Unfiltered podcast, Iowa Football Rewind.
Subscribe now on YouTube or your favorite podcast player to get a behind-the-scenes look that you won't find anywhere else.
Welcome back. Tonight we have Trevor Bollers, former Iowa fullback from the 90s. Welcome, Trevor.
Glad to be here, fellows.
First, let's start with your son, who is a defensive lineman at Cal. Introduce him, what he's been doing, and some of his stories.
TJ Bollers is the name of my son. He's number 88 that plays for D-line for the Cal Bears. Everybody talks about the journey and how the journey is different for everyone. I remember back in our day, to see a guy transfer or to meet a transfer, I think we had maybe two guys that transferred in. One dude named Jeff, that was an outside linebacker.
Jeff Kramer, yeah.
But other than that, it wasn't really that common a thing or whatever. Right now, with TJ, we've been through many of the different trials and tribulations, right? Because he came out of the 21 class, and they didn't even get official visits because of COVID. That was part of the reason why he ended up deciding to go to Wisconsin. It was closer, and COVID affected that whole thing. He went there as an outside linebacker, and we entered the transfer portal after 3 years of no play in Wisconsin. That was a quite interesting process for us. Right now, he's playing D-line at Cal. He's getting in games. He's competing. They went 6-6, just lost the bowl game, but he's having the time of his life, and Cal is definitely the right place for him. Regardless of what happens with NIL, he's definitely going to stay there and finish out his career. We're ecstatic as parents that he's just found a place that works for him in school as well as football.
Yeah, that's great. Cal's a great school as well, right? You're getting double the value there with the football and the education part. Dive more into the transfer portal and kind of the ins and outs on that, if you can, with us.
Come the end of TJ's third season, there was one thing that was keeping him at Wisconsin, and that was the defensive line coach that he really liked. That guy had stepped up for him enough to where he was possibly going to get playing time at the bowl game that they lost to LSU. He got in at defensive line, switching from outside linebacker. Right after he decided not to go into the portal closed, that coach decided he was going to go to Michigan. That was heartbreaking. He was going to have a new defensive line coach at Wisconsin. Although liking the new coach, TJ decided to enter the portal. I had thought that he might have stayed at Wisconsin, so I shut down my discussions with anybody about him transferring or potentially transferring for a while. He came back and he said, "Heck no, I'm leaving." That became a mad dash because we were in the second round of transfer portal. Right. This is going into spring ball, and he needed tape. Coaches sometimes give guys their film from games and practices. We got told to go pound salt. We had to find a way to get his film and get it out to other coaches. We did that effectively enough to get enough coaches involved and for them to see him as a defensive lineman, because until that point, he was an outside linebacker. That film was good enough to get the coaches at California, Liberty, and a few other places to be interested in getting him there. Those transfer portal discussions really come hard and fast. Unless you're a top guy that's at the top of your game, One, nobody's talking NIL. Two, you're just trying to make sure that you land at the highest but best location for you to play. The thing that helped us out is we went in with a plan, right? One of the key ingredients we were looking for is a coach that could define the path to the field. Do you have a defined set of measurables that mean a path to the field? Because his whole time at Wisconsin, it was like, oh, yeah, you're doing great. You could read like 9 million articles about how TJ was able to do whatever he wanted to do on defense. None of that ever translated into him seeing the field. First and foremost, we need a good institution that would fit with him. We also need a defined path to the field. We took the visit out to Cal. Their coaches had already recruited him out of high school. Coach Browning was really clear in his path to the field. That proved true even in the season, right? He showed us what he expected. He showed us how he wanted it, and he showed us where TJ fit into that type of system. I looked at TJ, asked him, "Can you do that?" And he was like, "Yeah, this fits with my skill set. I think this is the right place," and it has been.
What was the switch from linebacker to D-line? How did that happen? He just got big enough working out, or was it something with his skill set that made him more effective?
As dad, I will tell you that TJ's never been a good linebacker. Like, never. He thinks too much. He's a very cerebral, thoughtful kid. Defensive line doesn't give him the time to think. It's right on. When he has to go, he goes and is able to go hard. That's what defensive line allows him to do. He's always been very effective there. Wisconsin came along with the tantalizing proposition of outside linebacker. I wasn't going to be like, no, that's a bad idea. Hey, this is your journey and your choice. So go learn. And I still think he would have done really well out there had he been given the chance to get on the field. But the second he said, "I'm moving to D-line," I was like, oh, thank God. All right, here we go. We're back in the game. Let's go cause trouble.
So talk more about the part of being a parent. You've had this journey yourself. You've seen all the pitfalls. You've got the experience. How do you balance trying to be supportive for your child, not push them into certain things or situations, let them learn, but also give them an environment to learn, but also to make their own path?
It was a fateful conversation with my mother, who had called me. And my mother's this nice little old Guyanese and Canadian woman. So she has a Guyanese Canadian accent, right? Which is very Caribbean with an A. She called me and said, "Hey, Trevor, I let you make your own decision. Now you gonna let the boy make his own decision for himself, eh?" That's my best mom I can do. But that was how she basically explained that I need to support, but let him make his decision. And I understood because I listened to my mom. Her whole point was that coming to Iowa was so far away, I can't hold him back from going wherever it was going to be best for him. That was a lot of great advice in a few words. We took that advice, and it was hard not to just go be a hawk. You go, hey, but Iowa wants you, and they're right there, and you're right here, and we could all do our thing, right? That was a challenge because he had gotten offered by Iowa. He wanted to keep looking because he didn't know if it was the right place for him. It came down to it wasn't the right place for him. Where it was going to be the right place for him, we had to let him explore that. Even with the transfer portal situation, being a parent, you see your kid hurt, not playing him, frustrated. You go through all of those crazy ups and downs, and you can't do a damn thing. Like, there were days that I was mad as hell. Mad. Because we lost the game we should have won. Outside linebackers did nothing in the game to affect the game. I got this beast over here that could somehow do something and he didn't even get a shot. But I can't change any of that. What I can do is just be a sounding board, squeeze you as hard as I can, tell you I love you. Whatever your decision is, we'll help you with the best of our ability. And regardless of what happens, then we'll support that, which was very different from my experience, right? Back when I went to Iowa, my parents only got to see me play in one game because they were all up in Canada. We haven't missed a game since he started college. Being that much more involved has, of course, increased the stress on us. It's been amazing, and it's been an amazing journey. The book, Oh, the Places You'll Go, you never realize that it also extends to all the places your kid will take you. That has been a true statement. I have really enjoyed it as much as my own journey through being a Hawkeye.
That's great. That's reminiscent of my parents when I was playing. They hit every college game I was at. They drove to Penn State one weekend. They flew to Oregon the next. They would watch high school games. I'm sure you're doing the same, right? You're watching high school games and then jetting out, getting that next plane out to those games. So I think being a player and having that support, I'm sure for your son is amazing, right? It's seeing you guys in the stands, and it was unmatched for me. That's great that you're able to do that and show that support for your son.
It's been a surreal journey from watching him run out on the field for the first time as a college player. My wife didn't tell me that he was going to start, but he said he had an idea that he was going to get his first start. I turn around and it's him on the field. Everything just stood on edge, and like eyebrows just boom, and hair just boom. Everything on my body just like elevated. I didn't even know what that feeling was going to be like. I was so proud of him because I knew that he's had a 3-year grind to even get to that point. Literally remembered my own first start. It was a 3-year grind to get to that point, right? We took all those emotions and sent them rushing back. Now being a parent in this college football world, it's very different than the way college football was. It was set in stone. Now it's the Wild West, and we don't know what's coming tomorrow.
When you were looking at other teams, how granular did you get to look at each program? Did you look at what position coaches were where and what the roster looked like? Are they using these collectives and those kids that get better deals are playing more? Or how's that kind of work?
It's the Wild West. There is no rule yet. There are no organized specifics. When we came in, you knew if you were on scholarship, you were going to get this much. You had these places to live. You could do this type of work on these types of days. The rules were pretty set at that point in time. Nothing was really changing. There are no rules. We had guys that were transferring as starters from Wisconsin. It wasn't just backups leaving because they were looking for more playing time. These are starters that are walking out the door. This year at Cal, starting quarterback declared for the transfer portal before our bowl game. Those types of guys, they end up with different scenarios and different trouble. It becomes, if I have an agent, or if an agent will even take my call, the agent is looking out for themselves in many ways because they're trying to get the best amount of money for the agency because that's their job, right? They might send you to somewhere that might not be a fit, but is a good fit for the agency. Might not fit for you academically because you still have to qualify for the school. Your credits have to transfer. These guys that are going through a situation where their credits have to transfer because it's their third transfer or even close to graduating. TJ going from a top 15 school in Wisconsin to the number 1 school in Cal lost 50 credits.
Oh, well.
So,
But you might be done with 4 years or 5 years in playing and still be 2 years out from getting your degree then.
I can see it being very possible. If you transferred 2 or 3 times and the amount of credits accepted from doesn't even match or anywhere close, it's very possible that that kid is not even and nowhere closer to being ready for his degree. What I've seen is there is no more focus on the degree. People will say, yeah, you're a student athlete. They'll hold up the quotes and do all that stuff. But the focus is on the money.
Yeah, The incentives there is for the money, right? That's the focus, where before it was school and you have to maintain, I guess it's always you have to maintain a certain average to still be eligible. That's probably people's focus now instead of what it was before, maybe.
With the chance to make millions of dollars, if you take a Caitlin Clark story, for example, not everybody is her, but there's still that chance. A lot of kids given the chance are going to take that chance, right? And then also Iowa is, I would say, a minimal type of environment where a lot of these big things are happening. If you look at SMU's roster, I think they raised 100 million in probably a day for their collective and paid that out in order to solidify this offensive line that helped them form their program. Then there's a different scenario in Indiana where you bring up guys that are hungry from other levels, anybody that's been a winner or been hungry or looking to improve themselves, and win with those guys. Where the money isn't really as big a deal, they're trying to just get to a Power 5 spot to possibly make the NFL, because they're all starters from FCS or D2 coming up to Power 5 and looking to set up that resume for the NFL. That whole thought of, hey, I still need to graduate or whatever, that a lot of that's out the door.
I don't hear that many players ruled ineligible for academics, even though there's so much transferring. It seems a little strange, almost like that's not even considered, or the academic programs, support systems are much better and they're staying on top of it. It used to be a pretty big deal when we played that you would lose one or two people during the semester. Unless I'm not paying attention to the news that much, that seems very unlikely today. Seems like it should be more risky though.
Imagine if you were making a few hundred thousand, if you don't take care of school, you don't just lose your scholarship, you're losing like a severe amount of revenue. So it probably is a focus mechanism, I would assume, just to get by, to be like, what's the easiest way for me to do this? Do I hire tutors? Does I imagine? I don't know. Do you think?
I don't know. To me, the ineligibility thing gets swept under the rug. I think a lot of guys get asked to leave and enter the transfer portal. There's a large group of people that just disappear. If you look at the percentages of kids that like enter and then never find another place to play, I think that's one of those areas that you can hide ineligible players.
So they get washed out of the system. You take them and use them for a year and they get washed out. Yeah, got it. Those like good athletes that can't make the grades. Interesting.
Yeah.
Do you think there's any part of the portal that is a positive? For instance, for your son, instead of practicing for 3 years and never seeing the field, he's getting on-field experience. Is that an upside for all these kids that are doing all the shuffling? All right, you're getting in games. If you're somewhere you're sitting, you're not going to play. It's okay. At least you're getting game tape, maybe experience at the least. But is that a plus or not really?
It's a huge plus. The ability to go and take a shot on yourself, right? Take your own shot as big as you can, I think is a huge plus. The opportunity to try and shine is a huge plus. But then at some point you have to look at yourself and be like, if I've been at 4 schools in 4 years, is it the schools or is there something else that I'm missing? I think the way Signetti built Indiana with the type of guys that he brought in, 5th-year seniors, guys already graduated from lower programs who were looking to move up. I think he brought 13 guys from James Madison where he was winning with them. That will help you turn something around pretty quickly, but also help you have guys who academically are in a good standing anyway.
We've talked to guys that really put in the work and had to go through this pain process of getting to the point where they almost quit
They had to fight through it. They had to be the low man on the totem pole and work their way up. There was a learning process through that. I guess that's one of the things I'm curious about. Are we losing that part of that journey where you're going to hit bad times? You get injured, you're going to not work out with the coach or whatever it is that isn't getting you on the field. You have to mold into that. Okay, I've got to do this and that to move to that next step. Are we losing that when it's like, all right, I hit a wall or I hit a rough spot and I can go transfer to some other school and avoid that pain that ultimately might be better for you in the long run, right?
I actually agree in many ways, but I don't think that all of the transfer portal stories are like that. A bunch of the transfer portal stories happen because they've fought through that pain. There's so many different factors to it. You hear a lot of the guys that are on their second transfer or go to some school and end up doing really well. They'll talk about those guys all the time. You'll hear much about the guys that did go through the pain and weren't the heralded transfer portal recruit, right? Or one of the top 10 because they were starters. That's the weird thing that I'm seeing with the transfer portal. Even in college football, you're losing starters that don't need to leave, but are leaving for one way reason or another. Kind of like the Ohio State quarterback who left Kansas State as a Big 12 champion, decided to enter the transfer portal to head to Ohio State. That's a guy that didn't need to leave. He went through his pains, he got the starting job, and then did really well. Because he did really well, he's leaving. It's not just one type of thing or even 10 types of things. There are so many different scenarios in it that it's not really something you can quantify yet.
So your son's playing his final year, right? You said he's staying in Cal. And then what do you think his chances to play in the next level look like?
In this world right now, of course, I'm dad, so I'm very optimistic. That means I have to go and do my research and be as helpful as I can without being in the way. I'm pretty optimistic about his chances. The key to next season is production. That's what I've heard from people around the business. If you're plus in categories, measurables, the next thing you have to then prove is, can you produce results on the field? That's exciting about being at Cal for TJ, because he's getting a chance to be on the field and get that production, because his measurables are fine, but you got to be able to show it on the field. You guys know my story, right?
We know parts of it. I don't know if we have all the story. We're all finding is people struggled a lot more than we realized, even though we knew people fairly well. But I think coming from another country to the US, I think is its own unique story too.
And how did you, if you were a good athlete, how did you not get sucked up playing ice hockey?
Oh, because I couldn't afford skates or to be on a team. Ice hockey's expensive, man.
That's what Sherman said. Yeah. He's got kids in ice hockey now.
Yeah, he did.
Yeah,
And he was like, well, that's like flushing $28,000 down the drain or something.
it is to get ice time. I remember my friends saying they had 5 a.m. practice outside on a school day. In Edmonton at the time, there were outdoor ice rinks everywhere. Where I come from, I was born in Guyana, South America, which is the northern tip of South America below Venezuela. There's 3 Guyanas. And so I'm the British colony. Born in Georgetown, Guyana. And Guyana is famous for the, let's see, how can I put it? The common statement, don't drink the Kool-Aid. That is where Jonestown happened, and they drank the Kool-Aid.
Yep.
That's where I was born and lived 6 years. I didn't drink the Kool-Aid. Luckily, I was not part of that.
That's good.
You want to talk about another thing that's extremely randomly relevant to today? Our whole immigration story started with people that my dad knew walking that journey north through South America, hitchhiked and walked through the jungle. There was 3 of them. One of them died in the jungle. The other 2 made it through the US all the way up to Canada. Subsequently got jobs as machinists working on the oil rigs. The company came down looking for more machinists because there was a huge oil sands boom going on up in Edmonton. So my dad got picked up by these guys, and he had got the opportunity, but he had 5 kids and one on the way. Him and my mom decided that he was going to go to this place that we ain't never heard of and try and see if he can come back for the rest of us. You and I both know, like, your dad leaving you for a year is not one of those propositions that most kids go through, much less you and your multitude of siblings in a third world country in South America. That year was crazy. We had a neighborhood phone, right? This is like 1970, 78. We had a neighborhood phone. We get the yell from the neighborhood that my dad was calling for my mom.
Oh, wow.
Tell her, and so she'd leave us and run down to talk to my dad for a few minutes. He eventually did come back for all of us. In October of, I think, 1980, we flew from the tropical happiness and warmth of Guyana, South America, to the absolute gigantic mass mounds of ice and snow that was Edmonton, Alberta. We land in the middle of the night and they give us giant coats. We're wondering what the heck is going on and what are these things? I'm 6 at the time with no dang clue. That was amazing. That transition was amazing, and learning all of the different cultural things of being Canadian was amazing. Growing up there playing football was like literally my first love. I'd watch it. I always thought the guys actually had big shoulders.
Instead of having pads on?
Yeah, no clue about pads. No, I just thought they were these humongous humans with big shoulders.
That's amazing. Expound on Edmonton a little more. What's the town like? Obviously ice and snow and it's cold and it's in the middle of nowhere, but go more in depth.
Edmonton is the capital city of Alberta, Canada, and it is 5 hours north of the border. It's the biggest city that far north. Most of the cities are like right by the border, like Calgary, who is our arch rival. Edmonton is way up there, and it's because of the oil sands project. It's this humongous city that always felt like a small town to me. It literally felt like Iowa to me, but there were like hundreds of thousands of people living there. The crazy part about Edmonton is there was no air conditioning because it was cold for so many dang months of the year. Then come July and August, you were blazing hot. Of course, there was everybody's first and foremost love, hockey. The other kids that I knew would go off and play in their hockey leagues. They would be out there literally 4 in the morning, 5 in the morning for hockey practice on an outdoor rink, freezing, minus 20 temperatures Celsius, which would be like 20 degrees Fahrenheit outside. But you're a 10-year-old kid and you're out there practicing hockey, trying to become the next great one. At that time, we did have the great one in town. We were winning Stanley Cups, which was an amazing time to be where the greatest player on earth is in your town. I really didn't know anything about the US until they sold Gretzky to LA, and then we hated everybody in LA.
I've got to interject with a good Gretzky story, if you don't mind. So I worked for a photographer for a while. One of our shoots was we went to Arizona when he owned part of the Coyotes. And one day they come in and they say, we're going to dress you up as a goalie. I was like, oh, this is amazing. I could skate a little bit and got the helmet. They somehow got a helmet that fit. They got a couple of guys from the Coyotes that are pro players. All right, I want the full experience. Rip a shot at me and
oh my God.
Let's see how bad it hurts. So it's just like bounced off. Didn't do anything. There was a glove, right? There was a glove and the hand blocker. And then the block. There was a little bit of your thumb that was exposed because it was like a soft material there. Every once in a while, I'd take one off the thumb, and that was the only thing that relatively even got close to hurting. Next, I asked the guy to do a breakaway. It's you and me one-on-one. I want to see what this feels like. And he just flipped it in. There was no way on earth I was even remotely close to trying to stop this guy from doing this. I was like, okay, you're fast, you're nimble. He could have done it blindfolded. So
Mhm.
fast forward, I took my helmet off and steam is just pouring off my head. I ruined the shot, right? There was supposed to be models and whatever else. I'm just like dripping wet because I'm getting into it. I'm like
Yeah.
that little kid at PE that's like going full blast like I did when I was a kid. So fast forward that night, we go out to this restaurant, Phoenix. So they're sitting there with Wayne. In walks this really tall guy, and he starts yelling at him as soon as he gets in the restaurant. It's Charles Barkley. And so Charles Barkley is in this big wide open restaurant, and he's just like, "Oh, the pretty good one." Instead of calling him the great one, he's calling him the pretty good one, and
Right.
telling he's I thought you'd be bigger. And he's just taking the whole attention of this whole restaurant of himself and just top of his lungs. Oh, the pretty good one. What's up, man? Oh, I thought you would be bigger than you are. Just sits down and just like holds court. Yeah, I've got the best hockey player in the world. We got Charles Barkley. I'm like, where am I at right now? But
How the
funny
heck-
story. I was
oh,
like,
yeah,
what kind of
I'm
life
just
am I
gonna jump
leading
in.
right now? Yeah. But I thought
Yeah.
that was pretty entertaining. He must be pretty good friends with Wayne Gretzky. Call him the pretty good one and get away with it.
The kind of good one.
The kinda
Instead of
good
being
one,
Like,
so.
oh my gosh, you're Wayne Gretzky. Calm down, everyone. It's Wayne
Yeah,
Gretzky.
exactly. That's my Wayne Gretzky story. Sorry, go ahead.
No, see, but I think that's the fun part about it. He was that level to everyone in Edmonton, right? He brought us Stanley Cups. It was him and Yari Curry and S. Tikkanen and the rest of the Oilers. It was the thing that mattered in town. Being a football kid at that time, also the Edmonton Eskimos, who are now renamed the Edmonton Elks, it's a whole nother world right there, right? And they were also really good. We had a player named Henry the Gizmo Williams. He was really fast, a great punt returner, like our friend Tim Dwight. They thought that he could go and play in the NFL from the CFL. And so he went and played for Philadelphia for a year. Did not have the best time in the NFL. Field was a lot smaller because Canadian football fields are huge. You guys don't have a 55 down there, right? We have a 55.
The deeper end zone, right? The end zone's double
20
the
yards.
offense can run forward towards the line of scrimmage before it.
Absolutely.
And three
Run
downs.
forward
right?
towards the line of scrimmage. Everybody can be moving towards the line except for the offensive line. Those things provided me with quite a few chuckles. One of the best stories I ever had of me at Iowa. This is my first day in practice. Somebody sent me in motion, ran to the right, subsequently turned towards the line and started running to the line, and all hell broke loose. Everybody just went buck wild. Coach Fry's yelling at the top of the lungs, somebody tell Bollers that he's not in Canada anymore. God damn it. My position coach at the time is running over, hey, get out, get the hell out, right? Because they ain't got time for this. They got to get the playoff. And I'm like, what did I do? They go, hey, we can't go in motion towards the line out here. You can only go sideways until the ball snapped. And I'm like, okay, all right. As I'm standing back there, I didn't get another rep for the rest of the scrimmage. I realized really quickly that the learning curve had to be mine. It had to be taken to another level really quickly if I wanted to see the field even in practice.
So when you were in high school and in grade school, then like how close were the nearest teams? Like, were you guys
Oh.
traveling through 3 or 4 hours on a bus to go play other schools?
No, like I said, Edmonton is.
So you just played with, there's a whole ecosystem within Edmonton.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
The city had the city championships. The weird part about Edmonton is we have a public school system and a Catholic school system. They both have elementary all the way through high school. And I grew up in the Catholic school system. And I went to Holy Family for elementary and junior high, then ended up going to Holy Trinity for a little bit of high school. Of course, this transfer portal stuff really fits into my life because I then was able to transfer from Holy Trinity to my finishing school, McNally, which is where I went 11th and 12th grade at. McNally was a football powerhouse in Edmonton. At the time, I was able to transfer there because my coach at Holy Trinity got removed. I didn't like the coaches that were coming in. With the ability to leave that whole situation, it's one of the reasons why I'm a big proponent of the transfer portal, by the way. I was able to give myself the best shot I could to go from a place where nobody went to play college football to McNally and giving myself a chance. I was able to turn that into coming to Iowa and playing football for our legendary coach, Hayden Fry, who blows me away with his mastery of people and psychology to this day. Every time I think about the things that he did, it gets amazing. That journey wouldn't have happened had I not had the chance to switch schools.
So did McNally have a history of sending guys to the US to play college football? Or were you one of the early people that was able to do that?
I was one of the early ones to do that. McNally did have some history of sending some guys to places like Idaho or Montana. I knew of a guy that went to Minot State out in the Dakotas. Those were the places that you heard of guys going to, not Big Ten schools. The guy before me, his name is Darcy Park. He actually is a big part of Football Alberta. He went to a JUCO in New Mexico called New Mexico State Military Academy. Was working his way up and head to Penn State, but things didn't work out for him to do so. He was 2 years before me at McNally, and then I came and got the shot at Iowa.
So you're like, it's warmer. They have our accents. You're like, let's do it.
It was
Like you're one of
because
the only guys that went south, which is funny to think about, right? All the other guys came from Texas and they didn't know what snow was. You were, I know what winter hell looks like. So this will be great. This is like a vacation for me to go down south. I'm like an ice road trucker, and he goes to Iowa and it's like, oh man, this is a vacation.
I laughed to the day as long at those dudes. It was hilarious. Like Raj Clark learning about a winter jacket was just killer. Just seeing these guys on winter conditioning, freezing, all these Texas cats and Florida guys. The Jersey guys were fine. They were like, yeah, this is Jersey. Yeah, we don't care. But for me, it was absolutely a vacation. I'm like, man, wait a second. When does spring start? It starts in March, April. Wow. We don't get spring until the end of May, maybe the end of June, because like a torrential downpour of snow will hit us in May. The weather in Iowa definitely was not daunting, let's put it that way.
And the sunlight probably too, right? Because you probably all winter there's 6 hours of sunlight, like you get closer to Alaska style, right? Or no? Or are you not that far north?
Absolutely. Oh, no, we were that far north. Yes, we were. And you were right. But then in the summertime, it would be daytime. It would literally be light until 11:30
Yeah.
at night. And so that's one of the greatest things, because we'd like literally play basketball until 11:30 or whatever. When your mom always told you to come home before the streetlights turned on, they didn't really turn on then.
It was midnight.
Yeah. So there were benefits, but most of the time, like literally starting October to May, it was dark.
Nice. And so who recruited you from Iowa then?
Coach Austin did. He called, like literally the weirdest thing happened. One day I'm just a regular kid, just hanging out doing whatever, trying to find a way to get to the States to play college football because I love watching it. The next day I'm a recruit and talking to Syracuse, Michigan State, then the next day Iowa on the phone, and I didn't even know how this all happened. Somebody told me that there was a guy named Ron Diaz out in Ontario, Canada, who had seen stories about me and my stats and ranked me in his magazine. I never met this person, not at all. Didn't even hear of him before. And he had only heard of me and what I was doing statistically since my freshman year, and ranked me highly.
Which was what happened in those days, right? They had these magazines that ranked preps and where they were at and ranked them. Now with the internet, they don't have that anymore, but I think that was a common thing in the US, at least at that time.
It was. And there was the whole blue chip term, right? Like you were a blue chip recruiter or whatever, because you were in the magazine. Even TJ got ranked in the Lemon Report when he was coming out as an Iowa kid. That was really cool to see that like some of that still existed. Everything I found back in those days was in ways sight unseen. That goes into my next random story about being recruited by Iowa. When I got there, I looked around the room and all the recruits are sitting there and they're sitting with their host, right? I look and all the black dudes are with black dudes. All the white dudes are with white dudes. And even the Polynesian dude, he was with a Polynesian dude. But then there's me and Kent Call.
Oh, he's Canadian. That's close enough.
What? I'm from Alberta, Canada. You can't see what I look like on my film really because it's old school film with the VHS.
Uh,
3, for the most of the games were cold, so I was covered up. They didn't have a headshot. And
Oh,
talking
awesome.
like I do, I'm Canadian. So I'm talking Canadian. So I gave them no clue.
So they showed up at the airport and they're like, Trevor Bollers? And you're like, yeah, right here, man. Awesome.
that's hilarious.
Oh. And so the next day, right after the first day, Kent takes me out, and I'm chill. I don't care. It wasn't a big deal to me. It just seemed a little odd that I was the only non-race matched kid. But I was like, they must think I'm Canadian or something. So then the next day, Brian Terry shows up to also be my co-host, and I was like, okay, now this is even weirder.
Now we just pointed out the awkwardness.
We totally messed up there.
Yeah. The reason I came to Iowa was I could not believe the fans. But being honest, I had read stuff about Iowa and I read stuff about the different places. But when I got here and we went to the game, and in Edmonton at that time, it wasn't really like big time fandom for most things other than hockey, right? We had the University of Alberta Golden Bears, and nobody ever talked about their games. They didn't even get on a report. All I could see was Hawkeye football and Hawkeye basketball everywhere, even the women. This place is amazing, right? This is it's a whole state that cares about their team. And I'm like, wow. Then I get to the lobby of the hotel and I come downstairs to meet the coaches. And before I get there, I run into these two like very kind little old ladies. They're decked from head to toe in Hawkeye gear. And they have cookies. They look at me and they go, "Are you going to be one of our Hawks?" And I'm like, "I'm a recruit and I'm learning about it." They go, "You're definitely going to be one of our Hawks. You're a really nice young man. And we love our Hawks. We brought some cookies." I took one of the cookies and I was sitting there like, "What?" And they go, "We're going to be at the game tonight to cheer on our Hawkeye basketball team." And I'm like totally blown away just checking out these gals because like they're tiny and you've got these cookies and like they could barely walk, but everything in them was about Hawkeye sports and they loved it. And I'm like, where do you find that type of love, that type of fandom? I'd never seen anything like it, right? The next day when Coach Fry offered me the scholarship, I was like, I'm committing, I'm coming because I want to be part of something like this. Where the one gal goes, "Oh, she's the young one. She's 86. I'm 93."
You accepting that cookie was basically a verbal commitment that you were coming if you didn't realize that.
Those ladies are going to hunt you down.
Yeah, they pulled me in good.
We
We'll
got to
never
find those
forget
two.
that.
Yeah, they're probably passed away now, but or definitely are. They probably didn't realize how much they influenced you.
No, no. But that's a story I told TJ. I'm like, you never know. You might run into your two little old ladies on the recruiting trail.
Did you go to the other schools like for visits or no?
I did not. I actually canceled my visits.
Wow, Coach Fry and ladies with cookies made it happen.
Yeah. Yeah, I was that sold on this place because he showed me the hole that was going to be our new workout facility, which is now, I don't know if you guys know, but it's now the baseball training facility. And they set up cages and stuff in there.
I didn't
I
know
think so.
that.
Yeah, it's all been worked around for sure.
But at that time, it was the brand new state of the art, top shelf.
Yeah, that was nice when we moved into that 95 season.
Yeah.
The year after you got there. Okay.
Yes. Yeah. So they showed me the schematics and everything else. They showed me the little model. Coach Fry took me over. He's like, "Hey, that's our hole. That's going to be our new facility where we're going to train for football and all."
A huge shout out to Nate Kading and the incredible team at Hamburg Inn number 2 for revitalizing a true Iowa City icon. This historic spot is back, serving up the comfort food and legendary pies and shakes we all know and love. Whether you're a local or just visiting, make sure to stop by and experience the magic yourself. Check out their story and menu at hamburginnumber2.com.
Yeah.
I'm trying to think if Iowa had recruited many Canadian players. I think there was a random
Chris?
few and yeah. And
Was Chris? Remember him?
Yep. Chris Janitsky, Tony Stratakopoulos.
Stratakopoulos too. Yeah. So
Oh,
was that like a rash of Canadian players right there? Because I'm even thinking back to Iowa history. I don't know if there's that many Canadian players.
There was Nolan McMillan lately.
Right.
There were 2 kids I got to remember, Nolan McMillan, and there was one other kid. Gosh, I can't remember. Last I checked on him, he was playing the CFL, but he was a defensive lineman.
Yeah.
Right. And then, of course, randomly, there was a kid from my hometown playing for the Hawkeye basketball team that transferred from Central Michigan. And I'm like, wow, we produce basketball players now. This is crazy. The world is a different place and much smaller now, right? Because you look at Edmonton kids like Chuba Hubbard, who played for Oklahoma State and is now in the NFL. There have been several other kids from Edmonton or Calgary, or even Alberta, around college football that I've known of and watched. Whereas at that time, I didn't know. There was me and 2 other guys that I knew of in my class that had a chance to go anywhere. I was the only Power 5 guy that came out of Edmonton in that 10-year span.
Had you heard of Tony and Chris or no? Did you know
No.
anything about those guys? Yeah.
No, I didn't. Because both of those guys were from Eastern Canada, where a lot of recruits were coming from. But like being out in Western Canada, that was weird.
Yeah, got it. I couldn't remember where they were from in Canada. Yeah, I forgot about Stratakopoulos.
Were they the same year as you, or they were younger?
They were both in the same year. Yeah, we all came in
You got
at the
3
same
Canadian
time.
guys that year. Wow.
Yeah. Chris ended up being a undergrad assistant, and Tony transferred.
It was like Tony was older too. That's funny to think you guys are on the same class. I thought he was older for some reason.
So did I. I feel that he was. Maybe he had come onto a prep school, because that's the common path now for Canadian kids, is to come down and go to a prep school.
So talk about your transfer into Iowa City. How was that transition?
The transition to Iowa City was weird. I had come from Edmonton, where cultures were like many. I knew kids from every corner of the globe. We were all immigrant kids. I came to Iowa, and it seemed very much like a monoculture. You'd meet your random Black person from Chicago, and maybe a Indian professor or an Asian professor. Other than that, it felt like there was nobody here. Whereas growing up, I had kids from like South America, Brazilian kids, Australian kids, literally from Europe. Anywhere in Europe you could think of. When the war was going on in Bosnia and Herzegovina, there were so many people that were affected and still had families over there. Russian kids, like you name the country, there was some kid that I grew up with or grew up around or was a part of our circle. And coming to Iowa, it was very much American, and it was very much like a different type of situation for me. Assimilating into that, college life was not hard for me. That was easy. It was just the difference in learning about living in the US, and and things like ESPN and the rabid fandom in sports and stuff like that, which was not the same in Canada, other than, like I said, in hockey wasn't something I did. So I never really got to feel any of that competitiveness. But here it was like this really aggressive competitiveness. And I had to learn quick how to compete, or else things weren't going to work out for me in class or even on the field. So it was a much more competitive environment in Iowa City, even from Edmonton, right? Much faster pace. And that's weird to say, right? Because Edmonton's a big city. But I felt that the pace here was faster than it was up there. But that could be due to the fact that every day we were coming in and we were going to get down to it, and I was going to do my best to knock poor Bill Inge's head off.
Not talk about loonies and toonies and toques and Caesars and whatever else from Canada.
Oh gosh, when people said stocking cap, I was like, I don't even know what you guys are doing out of here.
That's
What's going on?
a toque. You're like, where's my poutine? Come on. Like French fries with no gravy? What's wrong with you people?
You couldn't go to McDonald's, dude, and get a pizza. You couldn't go to McDonald's and get a big giant muffin. You couldn't go to McDonald's and get anything. What is going on out here? And the McChicken sauce. I walked into McDonald's. I'm like, hey, I like fries with some McChicken sauce. We don't give that out. What's wrong with you guys? Everybody eats fries with chicken sauce. They're like, no, we don't.
You're like, where's the hockey night in Canada?
The hockey night in Canada was amazing at all. The one thing that I did find common was wrestling, right? Was actual like WWF wrestling at that time. Iowans loved their wrestling, and that was very common because up there we loved our wrestling and loved like watching all the different characters. Then I learned about wrestling in Iowa terms because Lincoln McElravy was in my first class. He'd come in looking like he just went through a bar raid and beat up 50 people over the weekend, scared to death of the dude, literally scared to death of him. This guy is a wild man. He goes and gets in fights every weekend and comes in here just baseball mangled up. And then I see him on TV and they're like, oh, yeah, here's our star wrestler. And I'm like, you're another athlete?
He was like 140 pounds too, wasn't he?
He was, but never mind. When I moved back to Iowa, I ended up being at the same church with him and telling him this story, my fear of like how crazy he was when we were in class together.
I'm sure if you heard their workout stories, you would be, right?
There were those great days of the spring party. We had it together with the wrestlers. They always seemed to be more interested in wrestling or fighting than actually just partying.
Yeah, it was impressive. Even like the 118-pounder, I probably won't mess with that guy. He might be a full 100 pounds smaller than I am, but I am not going to fuck with that dude.
Not even interested.
Yeah, no thanks. Yeah.
No,
No, he will outlast
no.
me. He'll like gnaw my foot off or something. I don't know.
They seemed like they would though. Like that, it was a terrifying group of individuals. That of course you see why they were national champions. Didn't feel like we had that same type of ridiculously focused energy in the football program.
Can you imagine? Yeah, that would have been unstoppable.
Yeah, like just imagine our wrestling program and that type of intensity applied to the football program.
I remember meeting Dan Gable and just standing next to the guy. You could feel his just bound up energy. It was like, guy's 5'6" or whatever. Oh my God, you're 50, 60-year-old man probably at that point and was ready to rock.
I think that was the funnest part about being in Iowa at that time, learning about that type of energy and the championships and like the people that were unsung but amazing in their own right. Even the field hockey team and their championships, the girls basketball team at that time, the fact that they were like the Fab Five of girls. Of course, we know that Vivian Stringer left, but like just the different levels of intensity. It was this huge learning curve for me because in Edmonton, I was like as intense as they came. And coming here, I had to up my level like 10 times in order to match it and be around these type of people who were also like on that level.
Speaking to that, then, as far as the football intensity, so do you feel like your intensity for your Canadian football was the same sort of skill level? Obviously, there's like levels of that, right? But
Mm-hmm.
was it night and day difference, or was it pretty close, you think?
For me, the thing that was night and day different was the training. When I got here and we started lifting weights, I was about a receiver level as a fullback. I had to learn how to lift weights, whereas guys were already completely trained and ready. They were like squatting, benching, and doing all these other stuff. That was a big league catch up for me. As far as like physically on the field, I did what I always do, which was headhunt, right? I found somebody and I knocked them on their butt. That was never an issue for me. The understanding of some of the nuances of playing running back or playing fullback, that there was definitely a level that I did not understand. I had to work on and catch up to. The guys that came in with me, and even the guys that came in after me, I felt had more knowledge, football knowledge, right? That's part of why I started Iowa 7-on-7. When TJ was going through recruiting, skill position kids in Iowa were being told that they did not have the football knowledge, the touches on the ball, the route running knowledge, defensive back play knowledge to be competitive in the market for scholarships out there in Power Five or even schools. I was blown away when I heard that. We're in the mecca of everything. We're in the middle of it all. How are we not producing kids that know football well enough to be able to go and play this type of football with opportunities like spring ball in some states? They'll have a full spring ball session. Iowa kids were playing football in the fall, and that's it. And football would not enter their brains again until the next fall. The number of times they would go through those types of scenarios, again, same as TJ is now going through where he's getting the reps on the field, right? The coaches would tell me that he's an amazing athlete, but he's a project. We still do help out kids get recruited and provide knowledge to them. For a while, I had a podcast called Recruiting Real Talk, where we were talking about the realities of you have to get out there and show people your skill level. Otherwise, they won't believe who you are. Even to get to a North Dakota State, South Dakota State, Minnesota State D2 school is going to be a much harder discussion because you don't have the reps. So Iowa 7-on-7 has been providing those reps at competitive level because kids will start in our 7-on-7 groups and will then grow into other groups. And by high school, you don't have to go to Florida to play 7-on-7. You can stay here and you can join a team. That team can take you down to Oklahoma, out to Nebraska, over down to Texas and compete and be successful, just like we did with Barnstormers basketball and all. We've seen a lot more success of skill possession kids over the last few years. Not just the transition from somewhere like Edmonton, it really is a transition of knowledge of the game and reps in the game. Today, everybody has trainers, everybody has workout sessions in their high schools. High schools actually have transformed now into mini training environments. They have, in some cases, like Urbandale and Iowa City High, better workout facilities than some of the D2s and 3s. So no longer is it just lifting weights and stuff like that. It's game touches, game reps, game time opportunities.
Yeah, back to the lifting part. We had like a universal machine at our high school, and that's the only real lifting I did. I don't know, Brian, I think you said you did some of that, right?
Yeah, they were just starting that program when Tim was a freshman at City High. I was a junior, I think. So they were just building the weight training program with rigor and structure, basically saying, we're investing in this group because we got a superstar here. When I grew up, they didn't have that. We had a weight room, but it was less structured. And so I lifted as much as a kicker as most of my teammates did. So that was unusual. But when Tim and his class came in, they all went through a program and then they became state champions. No surprise. I think we're a little bit ahead of the game in having a really good weight program. The rest of the school started to catch up, and that was mid-90s. So I felt like I was okay, but we didn't have that structure either. At least I knew I had to do something to be able to play D1 football. I can't just practice during the fall. I worked out all the time just because you had to figure out how to make those reps. It wasn't really structured like that.
Have you guys seen 7-on-7 and like the travel 7-on-7 stuff that's going on now?
No, I just heard it through your posts over the years, but I haven't really heard much in detail. You, Nick?
Yeah, not really. No, I don't. I think you see some of these like flag football stuff, but yeah, I don't know that much about it, to be honest.
It's become like baseball, where you have year-round opportunities to work on your skill in football. There's a lot of people that will knock it to the nth degree, but I've seen the improvements in Iowa kids and their ability to play defense, play corner, whatever, play any of those skill positions, as well as like the offensive and the ability to pass the ball. We just broke records this year for kids and passing yards, etc., in several of our schools. Former Hawkeye Scott Chandler just led Liberty Highs, a new school, to the playoffs, primarily by throwing the ball. In the last few years, we're catching up to where the rest of the country has gone with all the speed, route running knowledge, coverage knowledge. I'll take 12-year-olds and teach them cover 2 versus cover 3 versus playing a robber coming down. If you had said anything about those concepts years ago, they'd be like, okay, wait a second, what type of coverage, where? Or they understand man coverage. Now, terminology, concept, processes get thrown right in their face, and they're right in there. When they go to those mega camps and things like that, where like 20 colleges are, they can understand the language and execute the processes. And so it's been a game changer for a lot of those kids.
What year did you get that started?
Back in 2018.
2018?
Mm-hmm. If you remember the Clausen brothers, right? They were talking about it on College Game Day, I think, back in like 1999.
You're saying we lagged that far behind?
Yes. In Iowa, yes, we did.
We ran the ball all the time, so I don't think that would have helped us either. So I don't think we even could have thrown it if we wanted to. We got far enough in playoffs where it's like, okay, once you figure out how to stop the run, then we're done. We're never going to win state because we can't throw the ball. But
the only pass in the playbook was the Hail Mary, right?
that or like the tight end pop, right? The little like dunk over the middle.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah.
3 plays. Yeah.
It's been quite the revolution. Since a lot of these offenses are gone spread, you can't really run spread because you're just running spread run. You got 4 receivers out there, and the quarterback and the running back with the lineman are still doing everything. You just put more receivers out there to get people out of the box.
Oh yeah, Danon Hughes was talking about getting recruited by Nebraska back in the day. That the receivers that would have their hands down and just run block. They would put their hands down like a track start, and then they'd run block. So I didn't want to go there. It's just like the option in run blocking.
It's the truth, though. If you were a great blocking receiver, you wanted to go to Nebraska because they would appreciate your skill level, right?
Exactly. You were not expecting to get the rock, though.
No, heck no. Forget that. And I think today, if you're a receiver, you're hoping that you get the rock, or you want to be put in position to get the rock because your pro football focus grade doesn't really grade you on blocking.
Let's fast forward a little bit to your playing days at Iowa. Any good on-field memories you have?
My first start was amazing. My playing days at Iowa were just hard, man. It was quite the grind because I was really just a special teams guy. I was behind other guys on the depth chart. People asked if I was coming back, and I had even thought about leaving Iowa after my 4th year just to head to the CFL because I'd already graduated with my first degree, right? I was never one to not show up to practice and work or even work in winter conditioning, right? It was also clear that things weren't going to work out for me playing wise there. My wife, actually, who was my girlfriend at the time, convinced me to stay and just finish off the time at Iowa. So I got a second degree. My first one was in marketing, and the second one was in information systems. Then, boom, I get to start. That day was insane. There was a coaching change that year. I got Mark Hendrickson as our position coach, and he said, I want to start you. And so it started me against Illinois. I remember that game like the back of my hand. I know every damn thing that happened. I loved every second of it, right? Didn't really want that day to end because it was so crazy being out on the field, actually playing, contributing, competing, and then we won that game, one of a few that we won that year. You guys were already gone, right? Coach Fry's last season, and he had cancer, and I think Coach Elliott had leukemia. Every other coach was working their way out, right? And I think both of you guys were already gone at that time.
You're
But
2
it
years
was
out.
like the craziest scenario.
You were doing mostly special teams up until that time. I think you were
yeah.
on kickoff coverage with us. Were you on punt
I was on the
coverage
punt
too?
return team. I was on punt cover too,
Return.
but I was on our very successful punt return team
Oh yeah.
that produced a few touchdowns, including the fateful one at Penn State for us winning.
Yeah.
Right.
was
And
huge.
we produced Happy Hawkeye Valley
Right.
Yeah.
in the rain. It was awesome. But yeah, I mean, those were random growth days. And then, like you guys knew, my first year or my second year, we went to the Sun Bowl and I'm watching Hurley kick, I think, 55-yard field goals for us to win against the supposed co-national champion Huskies. Maybe they were Pac-10 champions at that time, but it was like they had won some championship, and we were beating them on the back of your guys' legs, if you remember correctly.
Mhm.
Hurley will correct you and say there was 150 and 2 long 40s.
Okay.
They get longer.
Yeah.
So every year, in about 10 years, there'll be 360 yarders in the game.
I used to love coming into the complex and seeing the jersey on the wall. I was like, yeah, my boy, awesome. Sun Bowl.
We're gonna have one good game. Yeah.
Special teams MVP. Love it.
The other big day was the day I actually got found by the NFL. There was a guy in the stands watching Big Pen against Michigan. And I loved Michigan as a kid. I was going to get to start against them my senior year. I put everything into that game and beat the heck out of their linebackers. We lost that game by 2, I think, or maybe 5.
Was that the Brady
like that.
game?
Yeah.
Yeah. Tariq picked him off twice, I think, and almost beat him.
And Kyle McCann was our quarterback.
That would have been a hell of a win. Yeah.
It would have. Right. It was a nice rainy day and stuff. And that was like my biggest play. I got a 25-yard catch. Come to find out, this dude watched me hit and block the Michigan linebackers, put me on his list as a blocking fullback for the Jacksonville Jaguars. That's where I got my chance for the Jags from. And he goes, I was in the stands at that Michigan game and you blocked every one of their linebackers. There was a guy named Barry Word at the time who was all Big Ten, and like he couldn't get past me. I put him in the dirt.
That's amazing. Yeah, that's a testament to, like, someone's watching almost all the time. When you get the right audience and a little luck and can open up some opportunities, you just never know. If you think, oh, I'm going to wait till a big opportunity to show up, it could be some random game against you and I that someone's watching, right? So you always have to be ready to go and put everything out there. So yeah, what an opportunity. Do you want to talk about Jacksonville a little bit?
Jacksonville was surreal. It's where I realized, and I explained to kids, that in an NFL locker room, or probably in any pro locker room, you're sitting in a room of freaks. everybody has a superpower, right? Everybody. If they're in the room, they have a superpower. There's something different about them that gives them the ability to be here. Sitting across from Carnell Lake, and I was like, it's Carnell Lake. Holy cow. It's insane. The NFL is like this kind of cross section of being one of the people that are supposed to compete with your heroes. You're like, but I watched you my whole life. And then I just saw a clip the other day of, I think it was like Jalen Hurts talking to Russell Westbrook. I watched you my whole life growing up, and you were like the mold, the guy that broke the mold for everyone, showed everyone how to do this type of quarterbacking. The NFL is like, you're just in places with people that are like amazing, and or in some cases your hero.
Was Tavian still there when you were there?
No, Tavian was there. Tavian in the NFL was 3 heads and shoulders above Tavian in college. When I ran into him again in the NFL, I was like, what happened to you? And he goes, it's about money out here, man. You cannot play with your money. You got to be physically ready to go. You got to be mentally ready to go. You can play around with them guys in college, but out here, no. You got to be the best you can be. His body had transformed, and it was like man muscle. And he was just so sharp, so quick, but ridiculously effortless. It was just unfair. Me trying to run and him trying to run were 2 very different things. He floated like a gazelle, and I was like moving like an elephant.
I probably shouldn't tell the story, but he was like in college, I can beat everybody running 3/4 speed, so why would I run full speed? And I was, all right, fair enough.
But it was the truth, though. He's
I was like,
good.
if I could run that fast, I would be running everywhere. It'd be like Forrest Gump. I'd just be like,
He was the ultra. Cedric was amazing, but like when I got to the NFL and I saw Tavian, and I think we had Chris Howard too, and God, the individuals on that Jacksonville team, we at that time were at the top of our game. Mark Brunell was a quarterback, and we got to the AFC Championship against Tennessee. Lost that game on an Eddie George touchdown late in the game that sent them to the Super Bowl and not us.
you had some really good defensive players too, didn't you? I forget who was there. Like Leon Searcy, or I can't remember.
Leon Searcy was our right tackle, and that guy was a freak of nature. Greatest punch of an O-lineman that I've ever seen. It literally would knock your soul out of you, stop you for a good 2 seconds. It was amazing. But Leon had the worst looking feet ever, flatter than flat, but the man could move. That's why I'm telling you, everybody there had superpowers.
Who else was the running back? Was like Fred Taylor? Does that sound right?
Fred Taylor, Tony Stewart.
So Jacksonville was a newer franchise at that point, right? Because they made it in the first couple of years, didn't they? They did really well.
Yes, we're still a pretty new franchise. And teal was still that new color that was discovered by the world. So all sorts of new teams were using it.
It was the color du jour. All right, nice. Did you think there was any possibility you would get drafted, or you knew you'd be a free agent?
I did not actually believe that I was even going to get a chance to go to the NFL. I figured my future landed in Canada, where I was drafted 2nd overall in the CFL.
That's right. I remember that vaguely. And that was before the NFL draft?
Yeah.
Okay.
How does that work? Do you talk to you at all to see if you're interested in picking you? Because it's a risk for them, right? If they pick you and then you don't want to go.
Right. Yeah. It was definitely a risk for them. I told them that I did not know if I was going to get a shot at the NFL, but if it came, I would go, because why would you not take your best shot? They had already gone through several situations where guys had bounced back. You go to your training camp, things don't work out, you come up and play in the CFL. That's the risk they were willing to take with me, which was just like an interesting scenario. Being drafted 2nd overall there, who knows what can happen. Obviously, I'll still be able to continue playing football, even if the NFL didn't work out.
So how did that play out then that year? You went through training camp. Did you make it on the team, or did you get cut at the end of the training camp?
So what I tell my young football players, right, is called the not for long league for a reason, right? There are many statistics that say that you won't last in the NFL for more than 3 years. And I am a living, walking, breathing example of a statistic. I tore my ACL that my first season and spent the entire season on injured reserve. And so that sucked. Didn't give me the chance to get cut. I was doing well, but it didn't give me the chance to get cut. Then that also took away my opportunity to head back to Canada. I spent that year rehabbing. I rehabbed and came back. They gave me another free agent contract to come back to Jacksonville, and that's when I got cut that next year. First time I'd ever got cut from anything. Is just really crazy, nutty moment, because I walk out of the building not knowing what in the world I'm going to do next. I just got cut. Now what? Wow. Okay. Something's going to change, but and it got changed for me. I wasn't in control of the change. That had never really happened before, right?
Even the language is like weird. You have failed to meet your obligations as a player, or something language like that. We signed you and you are so bad, we have to cut you out of your contract, or some language like that. I read that. I was like, damn, that's pretty harsh.
Salt in the wounds.
You played well, but we just don't have the room for you. It's no, you failed in your obligation. We have to cancel your contract now.
Oh yeah. It was contractual.
In writing.
You had to sign the paper too.
Yeah, and you agree that you were bad.
Sign this under duress.
Even crazier was like every team has him. They called him the Turk. You didn't know why. There were guys who were like, you don't want to talk to that guy too much. Okay. The learning curve of the business of the NFL is humongous. This is one of those areas where I provide a benefit to TJ. I've already been in the environment. I understand there are people out there that aren't necessarily there with malice trying to make sure that you fail. The guys there aren't necessarily that interested in you succeeding either. It could be their best friend's job that's on the line. And if you make it, he doesn't. It literally is a zero-sum game. Right? Eat or be eaten.
Yeah, it is a dog-eat-dog environment, isn't it? I remember a story when I was at Kansas City the second time. There was a kid that was a defensive back that was playing up back on the punter. I don't know what he did, but he started lipping off to me. I basically was like, you know what? You're going to get cut next week anyway, so it doesn't matter. The kid almost tried to fight me. I hit a soft spot. I thought we were going to go to blows for a second. I'd bounced around the NFL enough to just be like, shut up, kid. Don't be yelling at me. I'm a free agent punter. Like, I'm no one to you. But it was funny. Whoa, that hit a nerve. That much energy and angst built up in the time frame of trying to make the team, all the ramifications of it, I was going to have to throw down.
I'm surprised you didn't, actually, because you told him he was going to get cut.
I knew I could hit the soft spot. I'm probably going to get cut, so I don't really care anyway.
Those are fighting words, right? Because getting cut is money in the NFL. And I'm waiting for the fighting words to become now in college, because starting is money, right? Playing is money. Once everything becomes a free agent type, I need to do these things, or contracts become part of incentives or whatever. They're trying to keep it out of that. Agents, they're going to try and get the best thing for their clients as possible. Who knows when the incentives are going to hit some of these college level contracts? That becomes a very different thing for the locker room.
I also saw an interesting article about private equity getting involved, teams selling some of their brands, right, to these equity businesses where they can raise cash and whatever else. That's an interesting model too, right? It gets to the advertising models. It changes a lot of things.
Plus, then you don't get the chance to just relax and have the naked locker room fight. Come on now, y'all didn't experience the naked locker room fight?
That's not coming to mind, but maybe we were out doing something else.
People get chased around and harassed by someone else, but
in Jacksonville, I'm sitting at my locker. All of a sudden, a D lineman and a tight end are fighting, like both naked, ready to go to blows over changing the channel of the TV. right? And I'm like, holy crud. And everybody else is like, wait a minute. Who's going to take who to the floor first?
Oh God.
God, it is the craziest thing. Two giant individuals, towels fly off and stuff like that. These are like humongous men, and they're ready to throw down about the TV remote.
Such an interesting atmosphere, isn't it? For sure.
Guys weren't going to back down, and it's very interesting. That whole pecking order type of thing, showing fear. It was a very intense atmosphere. I learned quickly that you show no quarter. You show respect, and you respect guys for their abilities, but you don't back down from anyone,
Yeah, right.
even if you're naked.
Yeah, I guess you're naked with the TV remote.
We heard that in Ryan Terry and Danon's interview too. They were basically said, what are you going to do to stay on this team? You're going to cut block this person? You're going to go cheap shot this person? How bad do you want to be on this team? That led to fights. They knew it was going to lead to fights, but it was almost like the coaches were setting them up for that. Does this person have that willingness to do what it takes?
I guess for it to spill in the locker room too, right? I'm trying to think of the locker rooms. It wasn't that atmosphere, and like guys would definitely fight on the field, but once it went into there, it was different. It feels like a different animal. If you start throwing blows in the locker room, then you run the risk of getting booted out too, I think. Whereas on the field, you can get away with a bunch of stuff. It's just a few more rules inside, I think, isn't it? Feels like it. Or I guess depends on what your status is too. If you're like young rookie and you're like trying to fight some old veteran that's worth a lot of money, that's a stupid move too.
One, don't ever say anything to the quarterback. He's the money guy. Shut up. Just move on. You're not going to win. You're just not. You're hoping that guy doesn't notice you or values you to some degree. If he values you, you're going to survive. You may get another shot. If he doesn't, sometimes it comes down to those relationships. It comes down to who's willing to vouch for you. If that guy gets into it and really does not like you, you might as well pack your bags. I learned right away, say nothing to the quarterback. If you get a chance to sack him, if you're on defense, tag him, touch him hard, but sure as heck, don't make him fall down. That just puts a target on your back for everything that goes bad. You don't want to be that guy. There's plenty of reasons why you stay in your lane and hide, make sure that you bide your time. And one of those things that I saw real quick was like, hey, yeah, just don't even worry about the quarterback. Those guys are under enough stress themselves trying to keep their job.
Brunel had been a pro for a while, so that's probably a good mentor that way for you. He'd been around the NFL and had had success at that point. Was he kind of starting his career?
He said one of the most profound things to me. I was going to get to start in a preseason game. He goes, understand where you are. This is your opportunity. Make the best of it. First off, I was like, you barely have said 3 words to me this entire 2 years that I've been around this organization. That's interesting. You would realize this is a first start for me. It just blew my mind that guys even considered as much as they did being vets, but there was stuff that they already knew that I was just learning.
What other good advice did you get along the way? Do you have any other good advice that people gave you?
Carnell Lake, after he knocked me on my hiney, grabbed me, and like literally stood over me. He says, "You've got to bring it every play," right? And his like face mask was right in mine. I literally never forgot that because I subsequently 3 plays later pancaked him and thanked him for the advice. But literally, he's, "You got to bring it, Rook, every play." And I was like, wow, okay, I get it.
I'm from Canada. I'm nice to people.
There were guys that were just willing to give you nuggets. I thought I was doing him a favor by not going too hard. He taught me in order for me to be a part of something amazing, I have to do my job and do it well.
That's a great line too. I think there's certain guys that you didn't mess with. Okay, he's going to go half speed today and you're not going to go your hardest. I think there's a weird mix like that. There were stories about LT and some of those guys show up some practices and just have his shoes untied and just wouldn't do anything. Some days he'd put them on and just decimate people. Who was the guy from the 49ers? Haley? we're talking about Haley, same way. Okay, they have a different set of rules. If you're just in that upper echelon of performer, you get different treatment.
Definitely different. There's also the knowledge of who we are and where we're trying to get to. We know that you could turn it on and flip of a switch, but we need to see it now. And Coughlin was a no-nonsense coach, right? He was not interested in whatever you had going on or whoever you were. He was more down to business, and you better show up with your business suit on, and we're going to get to it. That was his environment. I don't know, maybe later in his career, he adjusted very much. You show up, we're going to get down to it. Every practice.
Yeah, I think it's definitely specific to each individual spot and each individual team. There's an unsaid rule too, so you have to figure it out the hard way. Trying to make this team. What are the rules? What can you do? What can you not do? What's going to get you fired? What's going to help you make the team? There's that part of the journey that you just have to go through and muddle your way through unless someone's like, hey man, do this, don't do that kind of thing.
To be really successful, I would say having a mentor, having somebody that's interested in just adding little pokes to your knowledge is a huge thing. Guys get like that when they see or believe that you're worth their time. It's not like hey, I'm just going to help out any rookie that shows up. When they see value in you being successful, they'll give you the tidbits.
What happened after Jacksonville then when the CFL team, who drafted you? And did they still have your rights up to a certain amount of time? Could you go back? Did you go back?
I did not go back after Jacksonville. I went to the Jacksonville Tomcats and played Arena Football League. Subsequently broke my other ACL.
Oh, geez.
It was a bitter pill to swallow, right? So I decided to end my football career at that point in time. I was having a blast in the Arena Football League preparing for the CFL, getting back to that intensity of football after being cut for a while. We had plans, and I'd already talked to Edmonton, who did retain my rights. I was actually drafted by my hometown team, Edmonton Eskimos, at the time, preparing to just move me and my wife up there. The other knee happened, and we were like, okay, well, time to use those degrees that I got from Iowa. The ladies didn't lie. I got my value out of being in Iowa.
How long was your rehab, the first knee? Because I'm sure that was probably going into your equation. That was probably difficult. I want to go through that again just to have two knees now that are maybe less than 100%.
Oh, absolutely. My first knee was like 7-month rehab, right? I got it back, but it always felt loose. It still doesn't feel right to this day. I had one hell of a set of arthritis in there, but I'm okay though. Hey, I earned my pains. That's the way I see it. I had fun gaining my pains. I wasn't just some random guy who went skiing and blew his ACL. All of my pains that I have right now, I enjoyed the time that I developed getting them. And then my arena football knee actually is my really good knee. That also goes into the most random of random stories. People could tell me I'm crazy, but I was a hairless dude. I did not have hair on my arms, hair on my legs, hair anywhere. And I got a cadaver put into my right knee. I believe that he was a hairy white dude. Because after I got that thing put in my knee, I started growing hair. Right? Like this beard, like at the time that I got that surgery, I could barely grow like a little bit of something here. Hair appeared on the back of my arms here. And it all happened after that cadaver got put in my knee.
That is wild.
That is the funniest story I think I've heard in a while. Amazing.
When did you get into coaching? Did you take a break from football? You got into your professional work? And then is that when you start having kids and they got into sports? Or were you doing some coaching?
The second we left football, I and my wife started just volunteering. Even while we were in Jacksonville, we volunteered at the YMCA and coached a multitude of sports. Then we moved to Rolla, Missouri, and I started coaching junior high football. I put this mission through to her. There were people who impacted my life. My junior high basketball, track, and volleyball coaches in Canada still to this day don't get paid. Mr. Kurluck, who I'm still really good friends with. And it's still hard for me to call him Ed, even at 50. He's still Mr. Kurluck to me. Him and a coach named Ron McIntyre, Gerald Kunick, those guys, the time they spent with me, encouraging me to just shoot for the stars, believe that I could get there, was just invaluable in my life. I wanted to give that back and pay that forward as best as I could. That's why I started coaching, and then just gradually built up from coaching junior high. Once I got to Iowa in 2008, we started getting involved in the Clear Creek school district and started coaching with the youth football. Then took over as junior high head coach for the 7th and 8th grade team. Ran the 7th and 8th grade team for quite a few years, as well as running the YSF program, which is the youth football, for 10 years. Then really had a great time. That got into high school coaching because it was a coaching change, and I really didn't want to go to high school, but they said they needed me up there. I became an assistant and had the most amazing opportunity to coach TJ through his high school career. That was something I'll cherish forever. I coached all of my kids so far in virtually everything: volleyball, basketball, soccer. I learned how to coach baseball. I knew nothing about baseball. Learning the love of that game and why baseball is such a passionate game and an interesting game. My coaching journey has been very fulfilling. I hope that throughout my coaching journey that I was able to impact somebody, regardless of what level they ended up playing, in the same ways that those gentlemen impacted me.
I'm sure you definitely have. It's great.
What kind of lessons stand out to you? What's the message or that resonates through you of those times? You've been through high-level college football and the pro football part. You've developed a passing league and all these things. What would you tell them if some kid came to you and said, hey, I really want to go down this path and be a college football player? How would you talk to them about it? What do you say to a kid like that?
Back in my younger days, I would have said, definitely go play football. It teaches you so many life lessons. In my world today, I've realized that not everybody is built with the same thoughts, processes, desires, right? What I say to kids now is go find the thing that nobody has to tell you to do and do that a lot. If you love playing your instrument in band, do that and become the best band kid. If you want to learn how to be the best rock guitar kid, go spend your time figuring out how to do that. You want to be the best video game player in the world? All these kids are like, oh yeah, I'm going to go be a professional video game player. If you really dig it, like if that's what you love and you want to spend your time doing, then dig in, double down, go put the effort into it, because you're not going to come out of it on the other end saying, I wish I had done something else. And that's one of the lessons I learned about my time in football. I regret nothing with football. I regret not a second of playing football, coaching football, being around football. Love every second of it. Glad that I've had football and sports in my life. Take that love, that passion, that thing that wakes you up and says, I want to go do more of this. Don't be afraid of going and doing it.
Unless it's your daughter and she works for the Iowa State football program, right? Then that's a little bit out of bounds.
Oh, man. Actually, she's one of those people. She says she wants to be the first female head coach in Iowa high school history for football. If you're enjoying it and you want to be that, go do it. So it actually fits right there.
That's great. You give your kids that support. I don't know that people have that kind of self-awareness to do that all the time. They have their hopes and dreams that they implement on people, and they try to push people down a certain line. To be able to pull back and let them make their choices, that's a really profound thing. I don't know if a lot of people can pull that off. I know that's easy to just jump in and say, do this, go this way. You can see everything clear as day sometimes from a step back.
I think being a sports parent and understanding that the value of the lessons in sport, to me, I call youth sports land, which is the time where your kid like enters travel sports. You get to go with all these other parents who are all like uptight and wrapped up, or it's travel dance. Talk about some aggressive parents, right? Travel baton.
I hope I get to miss that. I don't want to do travel dance. Call me a bad dad. I do not want to do travel dance. No, thank you. I'm out. I'll be like, I'm sick. I'm sorry.
I think you just
Sorry, Millie.
guaranteed that you're going to
I
do
know.
travel
I
dance
know.
now.
Like
You just
and
cursed
then it's like
yourself.
crazy makeup and the hair. I'm just like, no way.
You are going to be the best hair doer. You know,
The updo. I'll be like,
yeah, you're.
I
gonna
got some
learn how
skills
to
in
do
that with the
buns.
scissors now. Let's not.
Yeah,
I can
Yeah.
cut.
no, it's not about cutting it. It's about putting it in a bun. A regular bun, a messy bun.
Oh, you're deep. You're deep into it then. Nice.
Oh yeah, yes. Then you have to learn how to bobby pin the hair so that it doesn't get flyaways and everything else like that. You know, it's dad life, man. It's great.
Do you have any good Hayden Fry stories you can share with us?
I don't know if they're shareable because it's Hayden's jokes. My favorite Hayden Fry stories are when he would tell jokes and the assistant coaches would all go diving for the door so that they wouldn't be implicated if somebody got mad about one of Hayden's jokes. But my favorite thing is he'd always tell a joke at the end of practice or to start off one of our meetings. Was he go, oh man, we got to have a little laughter, right? It's never, we work so dang hard out here, you can't end the day without having some fun.
Usually his jokes were pretty bad. Yeah. Was it?
Coaching that long, you probably run out of them, right? It's like material, like Dave
He's gotta-
Chappelle. You used all of them.
He needs 5 years of them to get through all the new players.
That's what I was thinking. I always wondered if he regurgitated them and had a book of what ones he could pull back every 5 years because the guys were gone, and so he wasn't repeating them. Like the seniors would get like another set from 5 years ago.
That'd be hilarious. Yeah, some book he has of jokes he's told already.
Back in '85, I did this.
Watching the end of his career, it was crazy because you knew what he was, you knew the level he was, and the people that he had built up around him. It was an interesting preview into getting older. He did it so well and with such class.
Yeah, it's amazing his coaching tree. You do see his legacy and all the people he's touched. That was a wild experience. I'm sure it was interesting to see him in his last hurrah too, right? He was sick.
Even through that, he'd still remember you. Everybody at certain levels, they have superpowers. I think one of his superpowers was his ability to just remember everyone. Whether he'd seen you yesterday or years ago, he'd just pull you right back in.
Definitely super personable that way and would pull minute details out of years past and make that connection with people. Yeah, it was a super skill of his. It's impressive. I guess you're in the people business, right? You're coaching and you're mentoring. You've got to be a public figure. You've got to be a politician. Coaching is a lot, right? It's not just the X's and O's. It's a whole other level. You know that more being in high school that much.
I think that's one of the things that like causes head coaches to fail as the head coach. They still want to be in the X's and O's, and they don't spend enough time being in the people.
I could agree with that. Yeah, you're more of a CEO role. You're making sure people are in the right spots and doing the right things and holding a standard. You're not necessarily in the weeds as much as everyone else. That was interesting for us to hear with Matt Sherman. I thought Matt Sherman would have had more of a really in-depth relationship with him. It was more like Coach Patterson, and he would meet with him and they just go over general stuff and how the team was and stuff. So
But I did find interesting that he would go to Sherman about how's the team feeling. Like he was trying to get that pulse from Sherman, less about some of the X's and O's. He was making sure the dynamic of the team, the culture and the attitude was good, which is important. That was really key. Is having that pulse on there. And he could sense it, I'm sure, but then to ask directly to the captains and the other players, what's really going on? Am I reading this right? Or Are we missing something here? I think that's probably why he was successful. You felt like he cared about you. And then also he is trying to make sure that we had the culture. The X's and O's are important too. That's not the whole thing.
Not at all. I watched many times where he literally would not care about what we were running because somebody was in need of support. He would focus on that guy needing to get his head right at that time versus what the other coaches were worried about, running the play right or being on the script or whatever. I never understood like half of his like creativity and his tactics. I've owned my business now for 16 years. I've gone back to some of the things that Hayden did. Everybody thought like the pink locker room was the greatest gag in the world. And then I realized that just the sheer ultra level psychology behind it. This thing has lore for no reason other than it's pink, but the lore does all of the work. It does so much work. Coaches would show up and think about, oh my God, we're going to Iowa, have to deal with the pink locker room. Right there, you've already won a small battle. Just in one simple, small thing. Once I realized how the dividends that one little move made, how much it paid for itself over and over again. In the hearts and minds of Iowa kids who wanted to come and play for Iowa, the creativity of this guy. He made so many of them so continuously that people just thought he was being Hayden, didn't realize the level of strategy he was applying, the subtle tactics that he would just drop in there, just look away and be like, this is about to blow up real good.
It was a game within a game, right? You could tell he was a master at just getting people off focusing on what they needed to focus on, right? It's like
Even distracting the other teams through the press conferences, he always downplayed and never put up bulletin board material, hardly ever, for the other team. He lulled them to sleep a little bit with, we're banged up. I don't know if we can have enough players to play every week. Play a little bit of mind games just to try to get every advantage he could, knowing that we might be outmatched physically or athletically, but all the other intangibles we've got in our favor. Psychology was one of those intangibles he had.
Brian, how did our grass affect you? Because one of the things that was always hilarious to me is he'd be, oh, we're going to keep it a little wet and a little long. But like, was that harder for you because you're trying to kick on it?
Sure. Yeah, kicking it off the ground, that adds a little bit to it. As long as there is grass there, though, that helps. So it wasn't too much, but towards the end of the year, the field would get chewed up pretty good and get harder and harder. And so the opportunity to slip was more increased. I think my last ever field goal at Kinnick, I slipped a bit on a late November games. During the year, it was okay as long as there was some grass there. It's just the spots like where you do extra points where that gets tore up pretty bad. They don't really go in and replace that.
Right.
That's where it gets a little damaging. Or if you're in a spot like now, the fields are marked up and painted, and they're more larger 50-yard lines, and that paint, if you're trying to kick off that, or that can be a little tricky, but it wasn't too bad. I did like kicking off AstroTurf because it's more consistent and flat and easier to, it's just more consistent everywhere around. Sometimes you get lined up and you're like, there's a bad divot here, or there's a chunk of field missing from someone tearing up the field. So you got to try to move your spot a little bit over, but so there's a little challenges, but it does have a little more give. If you get a good plant, then it's good.
I always felt that his desire to slow down the other team to give our power like a chance to be successful. Like he was always looking for some sort of edge. And the way he had our field with tall grass and slightly wet, regardless of the time of the year, I thought that was another one of those like subtle wins where that guy was that jerk. He has the grass tall and the field wet.
I remember when we went to Penn State and saw like their golf green type grass. I'm like, whoa, you can do that on a field. It doesn't have to be 2 inches high. Oh, wow. This is nice.
The one thing I thought was like the craziest, most nutty thing was that right when I arrived in college, Northwestern decided to be good. and they decided to be good the entire time I was in college, and then they sucked again.
That was wild.
I'm like, these guys have never been good. Why are they good now? Why are they beating us?
Yeah, we went through half of that. We had like 2 years beat up on them, and then they came back and beat us up pretty good the last 2 years. So that was very strange. And I grew up in Iowa City, so I just watched them annihilate Northwestern. Even in their bad years, they would always
Yes.
have no problem with them.
And so to this day, I don't like Northwestern because of that.
Must
So,
have been something in the water.
I don't know. But if there's a game the Hawks had better win, it's the Northwestern game.
And that's the game that they were always gaming for, right? They were trying to be the Hawkeyes.
At that time, they did. They had Darnell Autry. And that guy ran for every record. I don't know. But that, for me, the lasting impressions of coming here, going through the experiences I did, we got to beat Northwestern. That's for sure. Go big or go home. Why not take your biggest shot? Don't ever let anybody tell you can't get there, because you're in Iowa or you're in the midst of the situation. I tell kids all the time, I come from Alberta, Canada. And I'm here, living proof that you can get there from wherever. Thanks for the time, guys.
Yeah, thank you. That
Thanks,
was
Trevor.
awesome.
Good catching up. Been a while.
Good conversation. Thanks a lot. Appreciate
I'm always up for it. Talking football is something that I enjoy doing.
it.